a video we want to roll for the start here, right?
Thanks.
The more we get games that can touch people in broader areas of their lives, they can come at them from different angles, the more it's going to attach to a broader population who will be willing to say, yeah, games are a part of my life.
If I put on a headset where I am and my mom puts on a headset on the other side of the world, we can both inhabit the same virtual space together and have, you know, those same meaningful transformative experiences.
For Minecraft Education Edition, we've built a library into the game that's full of hundreds of lessons that are often curriculum aligned or cover topics like equity and sustainability, or even digital citizenship, that make it really easy for teachers to take the lesson and assign it to students in a classroom.
We're going to see dozens of companies and hopefully many dozens of products in the coming 5 or 10 years that are treating many diseases through software and through experiences that we never considered as medicine before.
We want to make games that is not just for gamer who likes games, but for everyone, so that the medium we love can be loved by everybody.
It's very nice to sort of have that video to put things into context for us now. I grew up playing video games, especially even in the, sort of the tabletop stage, and my mother, I'd set it up all in the morning, and then my mother would say, you know, clear off the table, or else, you know, whatever, she's going to come out with a vacuum. And so it's nice to see video games, you know, sort of come from this nerdy place, and that's always sort of near and dear to our hearts. But now it's getting respect, and it's interesting to see. So, Stan, when we were doing our pre-call, you mentioned that the sort of the narrative around video games has been about the words defensive, normalized, and now celebrated. So that seems to capture the state of video games. But you want to talk more about that?
Yeah, sure. First, you know, starting with celebrated, not about the context, but just celebrating Games for Change and having the festival and seeing people. That energy is what we do as a community. We were able to live it in real life over the past couple of days, and we will for the next couple of days. And we do that as an industry and as a community each and every day. You know, the video game sector really grew out of amazing technology and ideas, but was often misunderstood and often blamed for things. As the leader of the trade association, Entertainment Software Association, in our history is spending the first 15 years or so of our existence defending the right to make and sell games. And it's strange to think of it that way, but the art form and the innovations around it were under attack. And even after a Supreme Court decision that made it very clear that video games are high art, are on the same level of other forms of expression, and really being defended vigorously by none other than Justice Antonin Scalia. We found ourselves still dealing with the residual effects. So I think we spent a good amount of time thinking about how do you reintroduce games to people in society into what we all understand it to be, which is this powerful medium that, as you saw in the video and the partnership we have with Games for Change, that can heal, that can educate, that can bring us together. And you saw this period of normalization where I think people began to see how technology in video games impacted other fields. I think the other thing that we did collectively, not just ESA, but the community, was to point out how games intersect in our lives. You know, we released a study a few weeks ago, the essential facts about the video game industry, and we talked about the sheer number of people who play. You know, 2/3 of Americans play video games. That's 250 million Americans, which means someone in your life is playing video games. And in the advocacy work we do, when we talk to someone, we actually personalize it before we get into the issues and say, does anyone play games in your life? And eventually, my wife, my son, I'm not a big video gamer, this 7-year-old senator told me, but every night I have to do my simulator because he's a former Air Force pilot. And so like, it's like bringing that into the conversation and saying, well, I guess you're right. I do get on my Xbox to do that, right? And just some of it's terminology, but some of it's really showing them how it interacts in their lives. And I think we're in this place where people really appreciate it. You know, one of the numbers in our report was that 97% of all Americans, not just people who play video games, but all Americans find that video games can have benefits to your life. That's a stunning comment from where we were 10, 15 years ago, even though it's something that we've all believed forever.
Mm-hmm. And some of this is also so recent when you think about the narrative of video games pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, so hopefully post. But the WHO was talking about addiction a lot before the pandemic, and during the midst of that, it changed and started talking about the mental health benefits of playing a part together, socializing through video games when we couldn't get together in real life, and so it feels like some of the reality of video games has sort of started to match the perception of video games too.
Yeah, and we even saw in our studies the numbers you talk about with respect to mental health and mental well-being were all up. So if I remember correctly, I guess mental stimulation was up something like 4% pre-pandemic versus now where we are. Joy was up something like 3%. So all the numbers around how games impacted people all were higher during the pandemic years. And it's because I think in part, playing games helps us escape, but more importantly, it connects us. And those numbers were up huge. Before the pandemic, our numbers said that 65% of people played video games together with someone in person or online. Today it's 83%, so an 18% jump in 2 years in people playing together. We think that has a correlation to why people feel better about games, because it's not just about the games, which are amazing and innovative. It's also about the community you form, and it's very customized to what you want. It can be your family, it could be a close group of friends, it could be around a game, but those things really fuel energy around what games do.
Mm-hmm. And it feels also like the broadening of the subject matter of games has helped out with this narrative as well. And we can talk about how games allow us to do good or be good or otherwise have social impact as well.
They really do. I think one of the themes I've seen in many of the talks at this year's Games for Change Festival is just about opening opportunities for new and underrepresented voices. That is something you can do in video games and really share a perspective that's very personal, yet reaches a lot of people. We're also talking about games that hit on different subjects and themes and can do so in a powerful way because the video game community wants to see that and experience it. It also means that video games help with a lot of life skills that people underappreciated before. Communication skills, being able to have conflict resolution, empathizing through video game play. So games really introduce us to new themes, but also to skill sets that help us interrelate to other people.
And what kind of policy sort of matters do you still want to address? There's still sort of opportunities here for changing perceptions.
Sure. Well, ESA serves as the voice and advocate for video game industry, community, and that means we spend an overwhelming majority of our time really talking to state and federal legislators, policymakers, and other civic leaders talking about the value that games bring. And for the first 10 or 15 years of our existence as an organization, we really were focused on legislative actions that were directed at the video game industry in very negative ways. While that has subsided, we've introduced new issues which are less video game focused and more about how the video game sector is growing into different areas, whether you're talking about things like subscription services and cloud-based gaming and what that means in how you play. We're venturing into areas that have either current regulation or contemplated regulation. When the word metaverse gets thrown around, and those of you who understand what the metaverse is, see me after and you can explain it to me thoroughly, because I can explain it to people, but I want you to really tell me what it is. But when you get into the metaverse, what are all the various regulatory issues that are going to arise out of that experience. What's unique about us as a video game community and as companies is that our goal has always been selling the product, innovation, creativity, but not the user. A lot of the legislative and regulatory action today is how do we protect the user in the context of having identities used for various monetization efforts. And we butt up against that because our model is very different, but we're playing in a space where the regulatory energy might impinge on it. So we spend a lot of time as an advocacy organization explaining to policymakers why we're different, why what we produce requires a little bit more thought in crafting legislation. So one example is something that's popularly being known as a right to repair. I want to be able to open the hood of my car and fix it, or my tractor. And today, given the level of software involved in manufacturing these vehicles, there are protections built such that consumers can sometimes not fix their own device. And so states, particularly in these rural areas, have been very adamant that you should be able to fix your own device. We don't oppose that principle. However, with broad legislation, if you are able to bypass technologies that protect the very games that are on these systems, it creates a problem not only for the creators of the software and the games, but also sometimes to the data that's on those systems. So we spend a lot of time explaining why protecting intellectual property, creativity, innovation is different than a product. And that's gotten a lot of resonance, and it's made them think about how do you legislate around really interesting issues. And because we struggle with a lot of those issues, we're able to share that and become thought leaders for their offices as they think about new technology issues that don't have a one-size-fits-all solution.
Got to get games running properly on a Tesla or a farming tractor. I think that you mentioned the metaverse, and it's interesting to hear people like Jason Rubin at Meta say that he believes that the metaverse is only going to get built with a game engine, and the people who know how to use game engines are game developers. And it could be very interesting to see this $200 billion industry influence an economy of the metaverse in the future that could be trillions of dollars, right? McKinsey said that it's going to be a $5 trillion economy by 2030. It feels like this is an area where video games will garner some more respect, I guess.
Yeah, and we're seeing video game technology being used to create scenery and motion picture films, right? Star Wars episodes on Disney Plus. So, it is interesting that the technology used to satisfy the video game community in terms of storyline technology really creates opportunities in other sectors, and that's computing power, that's photorealism. It really is taking advancements intended to help our core audience in ways that now have broader application.
So you guys recently announced that ReedPop is going to work with you on E3 2023. This is all about celebrating games now. How are you going to sort of properly celebrate games at E3?
Well, E3 has so long been an important milestone for our industry, not just for our organization, for our industry. And I think we've all missed it. We've certainly missed it at ESA, and I know the audiences have missed it as well. And trying to think about how E3 comes back has been a fun experience, and one that we want to make sure we get right. So bringing on a partner at the scale of a ReedPop that's part of Elsevier, the largest events company in the world, really helps us leap forward in the time that we have to showcase it. Now, E3's largely been about marketing games and innovations around games. And over the years, we've introduced different elements to bring community together and to showcase it. And so we'll try to pull all those things together. I don't have any news to break about what it will look like, but just being in the hallways here of Games for Change and being reminded of why we pull these things together is just emblematic of why celebrating something together, coming in person and creating a dynamic that is energetic, and then projecting that in a digital format to the world is going to be exciting. So we think it's a great opportunity to reintroduce what E3 can mean for the video game community.
Yeah, I mean, ReadPop is known for PAX and fan shows, and so I think people have been advocating for something like that to be a bigger part of E3 for a long time, which was mostly press and retail in the past, right? So I guess we can make a lot of assumptions about what ReadPop means.
I think it'll be exciting to see what they produce. I want to flip the script a little bit because we're all asking me the questions, but we have a stellar member of the game press here, probably the dean of the game press, if I may say so. And
I'm not the most skillful game player.
You graduated with a master's in journalism in '87 from Northwestern, and you started soon thereafter not only reporting on retail and businesses, but on games. And so you've been in this game for over 25 years. What has changed in covering games, the game community, the new innovations? What's changed in that time, and what do you see as its future? Since this conference isn't just about what's now, but leaping ahead, what do you think has changed, and where do you see game journalism going?
Well, I happened to pick up the daily beat of covering games when I was at the Wall Street Journal in San Francisco, and I was the youngest person in the office, and nobody else played games, right? And so they said, you want to go up and visit Nintendo every now and then and talk to them, or talk to Sega in San Francisco? And I said, sure, I'll do it. And I play games, yeah. And I had more success getting stories that were oddball stories into the journal, like the little orphan that they call it. It was sort of the lower right corner for a while, or the middle column, and never so much in the lead news story, right? And I think that's one of the differences now, is that video games is not sort of this oddity or this thing that you could laugh at. Really, it's taken a lot more seriously as an industry, and I think that's good. I think the game press has really sort of evolved as well. Like, you do have mainstream coverage of games, but occasionally, the issues that you typically have between folks that cover it every day very intensely, the game press, right, and the mainstream press sort of maybe occasionally weighing in, and sometimes having to explain it to people a lot more. I think that's like a source of tension sometimes. The game press has shrunk, right? VentureBeat, Gamesbeat, we're an independent company, and it feels like there aren't that many of these left of a decent size, right? And so things like Google SEO, they've gotten a lot tougher. Making money with advertising has gotten a lot tougher. The only reason that VentureBeat is alive right now is that we have our own events. And so if you can sort of figure out your business model and figure out how to pivot and adapt, I think game journalism can survive. I mean, we appreciate the support that everybody has for independent game journalism, and I hope it will survive. I don't think that's guaranteed. The marketplace is just very competitive. There's lots of influencers out there who aren't exactly always journalistic in what they do. So I think it's important to still have this sort of part of the industry that tries to reflect what's really going on in the games business. So.
Yeah, well, we certainly appreciate what you do, because you always bring it straight. I can tell you for sure he doesn't ask me easy questions during interviews, so this is like a moment for me not to have him writing an article about what we're talking about.
Kind of sweating there.
But I think what you bring is so stellar, and really a model for how to think about games, because you understand the space while at the same time reporting and being critical about the space and trying to bring that honesty to it. So thank you for all you bring to the industry and for sharing some of that, letting me ask you a question.
Oh, thank you, Stan. And I think we're just about out of time here, but
excellent.
I appreciate it.